the baby wasn't crying. That was the first thing Adiz noticed, and later, the thing that would haunt her every waking hour. Every other infant she had ever seen screamed at the world, announced itself with fury and need. But this child lay perfectly still on the stone altar of the Ụzọ Shrine, wrapped in white cloth, eyes wide open, staring at the sky as though reading something written in the clouds. Small fingers curled and uncurled. A mouth shaped like a question mark. Breathing. Alive. And utterly, impossibly alone. Adiz stood at the edge of the shrine's outer courtyard, her wrapper damp with sweat from the 3-hour trek through the forest. Her sandals were destroyed, the left sole had split an hour back and she had walked the rest barefoot, dry red earth pressing into the cuts on her heel. She had come for the ritual. For the palm oil and white chalk she was supposed to smear on the stone mouth of Ụzọ. For the prayers she had rehearsed for 6 nights. Give me a child. I will give anything. Just give me a child. The priests were gone. The courtyard was empty. The afternoon light fell through the ancient Iroko trees in long golden shafts, and in the middle of all that silence, there was the baby. Hello? Adiz called out. Her voice cracked. She hadn't spoken to another person in 2 days. Is someone here? Someone left their child. Nothing. Wind moved through the treetops. A bird screamed somewhere far above and went silent. She took 1 step forward. Then another. Her cracked feet made no sound on the packed earth. She stopped 2 feet from the stone altar and looked down at the child. A girl. Maybe 4 months old, maybe 5, Adiz had delivered enough babies in her years as a midwife's apprentice to judge. The baby's skin was deep brown and perfect. No dirt on her. No insect bites. No signs of distress. Just those eyes. Dark and deep and impossibly steady, fixed on the sky. Where is your mother? Adiz whispered. The baby turned her head. Looked directly at Adiz. And smiled. Something cracked open in Adiz's chest, a pain so sharp and so sweet she nearly doubled over. 7 years. 7 years of trying. 3 miscarriages. 2 stillbirths. A husband who had stopped touching her 8 months ago and had begun leaving the house before she woke up. A mother-in-law who called her an empty gourd. A village that whispered behind her back and sometimes didn't bother to whisper at all. Ogun Ka, the cursed womb. She had heard it said in the market. In church. At her own sister's naming ceremony when she had sat at the back and smiled and smiled and smiled until her face felt like a mask that might crack and fall away and show everyone underneath just how destroyed she truly was. And now here, at the end of a broken road, at a shrine that was supposed to grant miracles. A baby. Alone. Smiling at her. I'll just hold you, Adiz said softly. Just for a moment. Just to know what it feels like. She reached down and lifted the child. The baby was warm, warmer than she expected, and heavier than her size suggested, and she smelled of something Adiz couldn't name. Not milk. Not powder. Something older. Something like rain on dry ground, like wood smoke at dusk, like the deep earth after it had been turned. The baby made a small sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a coo, and pressed one tiny palm flat against Adiz's cheek. Adiz closed her eyes. The tears came so fast she didn't have time to be ashamed of them. My baby, she breathed. The words left her mouth before her mind approved them. My beautiful woman. The voice came from behind her, low, rasping, and utterly without warmth. Adiz spun around, clutching the child to her chest. An old man stood at the entrance of the inner shrine. She hadn't heard him approach. He was thin to the point of alarming, his white ceremonial wrapper hanging loose on a frame that seemed more bone than flesh. His face was a map of deep lines. His eyes were the color of old ash, pale gray in a face that should have had brown eyes, and they were fixed on her with an expression that was not anger. Not quite. It was recognition. You came for the ritual, he said. It was not a question. Yes. I'm sorry, I called out, no one answered, and the child was here alone. She was speaking too fast. She forced herself to stop. I wasn't going to take her. I was holding her. That's all. The old man, the chief priest, she understood now. She had heard of him. Dibia Okeke, keeper of the Ụzọ Shrine for 40 years, walked slowly toward her. He moved as though time was something he had long stopped worrying about. He stopped 5 feet away and studied her face. Put the child down, he said. Adi's arms tightened around the baby. She didn't mean for them to. It happened before she decided. Her body just refused. Something moved in Dibia Okeke's gray eyes. I said, put the child down. Who left her here? Adi's voice came out steadier than she felt. A child can't just be left alone. It isn't safe. There are animals in this forest, there are. She is safe here. He took one step closer. She has always been safe here. This is where she belongs. What does that mean? A baby belongs with her mother. Where is her mother? If her mother abandoned her, then someone needs to report this to. Her mother placed her here as the shrine commanded. Dibia Okeke's voice dropped to something quiet and terrible. 3 days after birth, as is our law. The child belongs to Ụzọ now. She is a debt being paid. She is not lost. She is not abandoned. She is given. The silence that followed was absolute. Adiz stared at him. Given. Her voice was hollow. You mean, sacrificed. I mean what I said. And I will not say it again. He extended one bony hand. Give her to me. Walk away. Perform your ritual and go home to your husband. What you want from this shrine, if you are faithful, will come in time. In time. She had been faithful for 7 years. The baby made that sound again, that soft, impossible sound that was not quite a laugh, and curled both fists into the fabric of Adiz's wrapper. In time. Her mother-in-law's voice in the dark, empty gourd. Empty gourd. Her husband's back, turned away from her in their marriage bed, rigid and cold. 3 funerals she had held in her own body, with no grave to visit, no name to say. No, Adiz heard herself say. The word surprised even her. Dibia Okeke went very still. What did you say to me? I said no. She stepped back, pulling the baby tighter. Her heart was slamming. Her cracked feet, forgotten until now, screamed in pain. I'm not leaving her here. You said her mother placed her as a debt. That means there is a mother. Living. Breathing. And no mother places her child on a stone altar because she wants to. Someone made her do this. And I am not walking away and leaving this child here too. You do not understand what you are touching. Something changed in the old priest's voice, the control cracked, just slightly, and what bled through underneath it was not anger. It was fear. That child is not yours to save. If you take her from this place, you take everything that was meant to stay here with her. Do you understand me? Everything. Adiz understood nothing. Her mind was white noise and heartbeat. She turned and ran. She ran until the shrine was swallowed by the trees, and then she ran further, the baby pressed against her chest, one arm hooked under the warm weight of her, and the forest closing around them both like a held breath. Her destroyed sandal finally gave out completely, and she kicked it off without slowing down, then kicked off the other one, and ran barefoot on the forest floor, stones and roots cutting into her soles, not caring, not stopping. Behind her, nothing. No footsteps. No voice. That was almost worse than pursuit. She reached the dirt road that connected the shrine path to the main village track and stopped, gasping. The baby was still silent. Still warm. Still watching her with those unsettling steady eyes. "It's all right," Adiz panted, more to herself than to the child. "It's all right. You're all right. We're..." She looked down. The baby's white wrapper had a mark on it she hadn't noticed before. A symbol, worked into the cloth in thread so dark it was almost invisible against the white. She squinted. It looked like a doorway. An open doorway, with something emerging from it that she couldn't quite resolve into a shape. "If you take her from this place, you take everything that was meant to stay here with her." Adiz wrapped the cloth more tightly around the symbol and started walking. "If you're already feeling the weight of what Adiz just did, you should be." She walked out of that shrine with a baby, a broken sandal, and something she doesn't yet know she's carrying. Hit subscribe right now, because what happens when she gets home is going to change everything, and you are not going to want to miss a single second of it. Adiz's house sat at the edge of a Munna village, separated from the main cluster of homes by a small cassava farm that had mostly gone to weed. Her husband Chekwamika had stopped tending it 2 seasons ago, around the same time he had stopped tending their marriage. The fence was rusting. The front door needed painting. But it was a solid house, cement block, tin roof, built by Emika's father, and when Adiz stepped through the door with the baby on her chest, it was the first time in years the house had felt like anything other than a beautiful, empty box. She laid the child on the sitting room mat and stood over her, both of them breathing. "What do I call you?" Adiz whispered. The baby blinked. Curled her fists. Said nothing that was language and somehow communicated everything. "Chisholm," Adiz said. "God is with me. I'll call you Chisholm." She was boiling water for the baby's bath when she heard Emika's motorcycle in the yard. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't planned this far ahead. In truth, she hadn't planned anything at all. The last 4 hours had been pure instinct, pure desperate motion, a body doing what a mind was too cracked to prevent. The front door opened. Emika stopped dead in the doorway. He was a large man, wide shoulders, careful eyes, a jaw that was permanently set as though braced for bad news. He was wearing his mechanic's coverall, still dirty with grease, and his face when he saw the baby on the mat went through 5 expressions in 2 seconds: confusion, shock, suspicion, something that might have been wonder, and then, hard, closing down like shutters slamming. Adiz. His voice was very quiet. "What is that?" "Her name is Chisholm." I asked what, not what is her name. "She's a baby, Emika. She is a 4-month-old baby girl who..." "Where did she come from?" He stepped inside and closed the door carefully. That careful movement frightened her more than shouting would have. "I am going to ask you one time. Where did she come from?" Adiz lifted her chin. "The Ụzọ Shrine. She was left on the altar. Alone. The priest said she had been given to the shrine as some kind of... You took a child." His voice was barely above a whisper. "From the shrine. I saved a child from..." "You stole a child from the shrine, Adiz." The control broke all at once, and his voice filled the room like a thunderclap, and Chisholm, for the first time since Adiz had found her, flinched. Just slightly. Just a micro-tremor through her small body. Adiz crossed the room in 3 steps and picked the baby up before she thought about it, pulling her away from the noise of Emika's voice, turning her own body between her husband and the child. "Don't shout near her." A beat of absolute silence. Emika's face did something complicated, something hurt moved through it, swift and quickly buried. He looked at his wife standing there, holding a child like a shield and like a prayer, and for a moment he was quiet. "Adiz," he said, lower now. "Tired. Do you know what they will do to us? When they find out?" Dibia Okeke doesn't report things to the police. He doesn't go to the council. The things that family has done to people who... I know what they say about him. Then you know this isn't a thing you can walk back from. I'm not walking it back. He stared at her. She stared at him. Chisholm made her small sound between them, that almost laugh, that impossible almost laugh, and something moved across Emika's face that he was clearly trying very hard not to show. He turned away. I'm going to wash up, he said. And then you are going to tell me everything. Everything, Adiz. And we are going to figure out what to do. He walked to the bathroom and closed the door. Adiz sat on the mat and held Chisholm and listened to the water run, and noticed her hands were shaking, and noticed that she was, underneath all the terror and the guilt and the wild reckless love already blooming in her chest, happy. For the first time in 7 years. Which meant, she knew, that something was about to go terribly wrong. The first sign came at midnight. She woke from a sleep she didn't remember entering, Chisholm curled beside her on the bed, Emika's broad back a wall on her other side. The room was dark. The house was silent. And in the corner, by the wardrobe, something was standing. She couldn't see it clearly. It was the absence of light rather than the presence of shape, a darkness that was denser than the surrounding dark, roughly person-shaped, roughly still. Adiz's heart seized. She tried to scream and produced only silence, her throat locked, her body paralyzed in the specific helpless way of nightmares. The dark shape tilted its head. Chisholm stirred beside her and made a small sound. And the shape leaned toward the sound. No. Adiz's voice came back all at once and she lurched upright, grabbing Chisholm, and the room was empty. Just their bedroom, just the familiar wardrobe, just Emika bolting awake beside her, grabbing her arm. What happened, Adiz? Someone was here, she gasped. In the room. In the corner. He was already on his feet, crossing to the wardrobe, throwing open the door, checking the window, locked, painted shut, had been for 2 years. He checked the front door, the back. Returned to the bedroom breathing hard. Nothing, he said. There's no one here. She looked at the corner. Just shadow. Just wall. It was looking at the baby, she whispered. Emika was quiet for a long moment. Adiz. His voice was different now, stripped of the anger, stripped of the control. Just fear left, bare and honest. We have to take her back. I won't. I know what you feel. I see it on you. But that place, the things that priest. She smiled at me, Emika. Her voice broke. Just slightly. She looked at me and she smiled and I felt her in my arms and I can't. I can't take her back to that stone altar and walk away. I cannot. He sat on the edge of the bed. Rubbed his face with both hands. In the dim light he looked older than his years, worn in ways that had everything to do with the grief they had shared and never once spoken out loud to each other, the way 2 people can drown in adjacent rooms. I saw the symbol on her cloth, he said finally. Adiz went still. What do you know about it? My grandfather spoke of it. He was one of the shrine priests, long time ago, before he converted. Emika's hands dropped from his face and he looked at Chisholm, really looked, for the first time, and his expression was the most complex thing Adiz had ever seen on him. The symbol is called Onu Yua. The mouth of the world. They put it on the children given to Uzo. It marks them as passages. Doorways. Doorways to what? He didn't answer immediately. Emika. Doorways to what? My grandfather said, those children are given so that what lives in the shrine stays in the shrine. He met her eyes. If the child is removed from the shrine before the rite is complete, whatever was supposed to be contained comes through, Adiz finished. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. Chisholm slept. Perfect and still and warm. 3 days after Adiz brought Chisholm home, a woman appeared at her door. She was young, early 20s, maybe younger, with a face that was beautiful in the ruined way of someone who had been crying for a very long time. She wore a plain blue wrapper and no jewelry, and her eyes when Adiz opened the door dropped immediately to Chisholm, who was tied to Adiz's back, and something in that young woman's face cracked open like old plaster falling from a wall. "Please," she said. Her voice was barely sound. "Please. That's my daughter." The air left Adiz's lungs. She had known this moment was coming. She had known it with the same sick certainty she knew the sun would rise. And still it hit her like a physical blow, like a hand against her sternum, like the world tilting 2 degrees off its axis. "Come inside," Adiz said. Her name was Ngozi. 19 years old. She had given birth to Chisholm, she called her Adana, father's jewel, for months and 11 days ago, and she had placed her on the shrine altar herself because Dibia Okeke had come to her family home 9 months earlier and told them the debt was due. "What debt?" Adiz asked. Ngozi's hands twisted in her lap. "My mother. 15 years ago, she was barren." She stopped herself. Started again. She went to the shrine. She begged Dibia Okeke. He performed the rite and she fell pregnant with me. She raised her eyes. The price. The price of the rite is always the first daughter of the daughter. 1 generation later. The shrine takes back what it lent. The room felt very cold. Adiz looked at Chisholm, at Adana, sleeping against her back, that impossible warmth, that perfect small weight. "Your mother knew?" she asked. When she made the bargain, she knew that her granddaughter would be. She was told she would have a daughter. She was told that daughter would have a daughter. And that daughter would be. Ngozi's voice fractured. She was 20 years old and barren, and she said yes before she understood what yes meant, and she has been dying of it ever since. A tear moved down her cheek. "I didn't know. Not until Dibia Okeke came. Not until it was too late." The pieces fell into place with a cold and horrible precision. A barren woman had gone to a shrine. Had paid a price she didn't understand. Had gotten her miracle. And now, a generation later, another woman, her daughter, had stood at that same altar with her arms empty and her heart full of the same old desperate ache. And had taken back what the shrine had claimed. Do you see it now? Do you see what this is really about? 2 mothers. 2 empty arms. 1 child caught between them and something ancient and hungry that doesn't care about either of their pain. If this story is breaking your heart, it should be. Hit subscribe right now and share this video, because part 2 is coming and I promise you, nothing is resolved. Everything is about to get worse. You need to be subscribed when it does. Adiz and Ngozi sat across from each other in the small sitting room with a child between them who was both of theirs and neither of theirs, and the afternoon light came through the curtain in long pale lines, and neither woman spoke for what felt like a very long time. "I want her back," Ngozi finally said. Her voice was raw. Not aggressive. Just naked truth. "She's mine. I placed her at that altar because I was terrified and because I thought it was the only way to protect my family." Dibia Okeke said if I refused, he would take my mother, and she's all I have, but I have not slept since the day I laid her down. I hear her every night. I hear her breathing even though she isn't there. My body is still. She pressed one hand to her chest. I'm still her mother. I will always be her mother. I know, Adiz said. The 2 words cost her something she couldn't measure. I know you're her mother, Adiz continued. Her voice was steady in the way of something that has to be held rigid to stay whole. I know that. I have known it. But I need you to understand something. She looked at Chisholm. I'm going to fight for her too. Not against you. But I am going to fight. Ngozi studied her. Fight who? Dibia Okeke. Adiz met the young woman's eyes. Because you said it yourself, your mother went to that shrine and paid a price she didn't understand. And 15 years later he came to collect from her daughter. And now if we give Chisholm, if we give Adana back, then in another 20 years his priests will come to your grandchild. And the child after that. Her voice dropped. This doesn't end. He'll take from your bloodline forever. Unless someone ends it. Something shifted in Ngozi's expression. Fear, then recognition, then a fury so young and bright it was almost painful to see. He told me, Ngozi said slowly, that the only way to break the debt is to complete the rite. If the child isn't returned to the shrine by the new moon, she stopped. When is the new moon? Adiz asked. Tomorrow night. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He also said, Ngozi's voice lowered further. He said if the child is not returned, what she was meant to contain will have followed her out of the shrine. And it won't stop at the family that took her. It will keep moving. Keep looking. Until it finds a way back in. The dark shape in the corner. The head tilting toward the sound of the baby's voice. Emeka appeared in the doorway behind Adiz. He had been listening from the kitchen. She knew, she could feel the specific quality of his silence. He walked in now and stood behind her and put both hands on her shoulders, and she felt the weight of them, the familiar weight of him, and it meant something different than it had meant for the last 8 months. It meant I'm here. It meant I'm not leaving. There are 3 of us, he said to Ngozi. Tell us everything Dibia Okeke told you. Everything. Don't leave out details. Ngozi looked at him. At Adiz. At the child. She took a breath. He told me the rite requires the child to be placed by her blood mother. No other hands will satisfy the debt. If someone else places her, even on the correct altar, even at the correct hour, the shrine won't accept it. She swallowed. The debt was made in my mother's blood. It can only be closed in mine. Then we go together, Adiz said immediately. Adiz, Emeka started. Together. She turned to look at him. She doesn't go alone. We go with her. All 3 of us. And when we are standing in front of that altar, we are not giving the baby back to Dibia Okeke. We are closing the debt, on our terms, not his. You don't know how to do that, Ngozi said. Do you? A beat. My mother might, Ngozi said quietly. She's the one who made the bargain. She knows what words were said. She's known all along what the price would be. Her voice went flat with old grief. She's been carrying it for 19 years. They went at dusk. 4 of them, Adiz, Emeka, Ngozi, and Ngozi's mother Chidinma, who was a small woman with a face that looked like guilt, had been working on it for nearly 2 decades. She walked with her head down and her hands clasped, and when Adiz looked at her she felt many things, none of them simple. This woman's desperate act, a young Barren woman's trip to a shrine, a prayer said in the dark, had started a chain of loss and debt that had consumed her daughter, nearly consumed her granddaughter, and had somehow brought Adiz to that stone altar today. Was she so different from Chidinma? She had walked to that same shrine with the same hunger. The same emptiness. Give me a child. I will give anything. She hadn't said the words. She hadn't made the bargain. But she had thought them. In the deepest part of herself, she had thought them. The forest path was different in the dying light, the trees taller, the shadows deeper, the sounds of birds replaced by something that was almost silence but not quite. A low, resonant hum at the edge of hearing, like the forest itself was holding a note. Adiz kept Chisholm close against her chest, the baby's eyes tracking everything with that same unnerving steadiness. They were 200 meters from the shrine when Dibia Okeke stepped out of the trees. He was not alone. Behind him, half visible in the gathering dark, stood 3 younger men in white ceremonial cloth, shrine acolytes, each of them large, each of them watchful. The priest himself looked at the group of them, and his gray eyes moved to Adiz and then to Chisholm and then to Ngozi, and something in his expression was not surprise. He had expected them. You've come to your senses, he said. His voice was neutral, stripped of the fear she had heard in it that afternoon. Good. We've come to close the debt, Adiz said. Properly. Tonight. By the law of the shrine, not by your will. Dibia Okeke regarded her. You know the law of the shrine? Her mother does, Emeka said. He put a hand at the small of Adiz's back, present, steady. And so now we do. Something moved in the priest's gray eyes. Calculation. And beneath the calculation, that flicker of fear again, quickly suppressed. The debt is simple. The child is returned by the blood mother at the altar. Nothing else is required. That's not what the founding rite says. Chidinma's voice came from behind Adiz, quiet, firm, carrying the weight of 19 years of guilt and memory. She stepped forward until she was standing beside Adiz. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was not. I was there when you performed the rite. I remember every word. The debt can be redeemed. The shrine can be satisfied without the child if the original petitioner renounces the gift and returns what was given. Silence. If I renounce my daughter, Chidinma continued, if I say before the altar that I release the miracle, the shrine's claim ends. No child. No grandchild. The debt dies with the generation that created it. Dibia Okeke's face went very still. You would denounce your own child, he said. I would free her. Chidinma's voice broke, just once, and then held. I would free her and her daughter. I would have done it years ago if I had known it was possible. She turned and looked at Ngozi, and the look between them was a whole conversation and also a reckoning and also a kind of broken love that had survived being buried for too long. I should have told you. I should have found another way. I am sorry. I have been sorry every day of your life. Ngozi was crying. Not dramatically, just tears on her face, quietly, the way people cry when the grief is too old for noise. Adiz held Chisholm and felt the warmth of her against her chest and felt, beneath the warmth, the awareness of what was about to be decided. Not for her. Not tonight. Tonight was Ngozi's story and Chidinma's story, and Adiz was here as witness, as protector, and she would hold this child until the rite was finished and then. The rite of renouncement requires a life, Dibia Okeke said. His voice had changed again, softer, silkier, and that softness was more frightening than his anger had been. The founding rite is precise. A debt made in desperation cannot be dissolved with words alone. Something must be exchanged. Chidinma met his eyes. I know. Mama, Ngozi grabbed her arm. I know what it costs. Chidinma's voice was steady and terrible. I've had 19 years to think about what I would give if I could give anything. And I have an answer. She turned to face the shrine. Take what years I have left. Whatever the shrine wants from me, I will give it. Let my daughter and my granddaughter go free. Mama. Ngozi's voice cracked like a struck bell. The hum in the forest rose. The acolytes behind Dibia Okeke shifted, glanced at each other, glanced at the priest, uncertain in a way they hadn't been moments ago. And the old priest himself, the old priest with the gray eyes and the terrible stillness, looked at Chidinma and then looked at Adiz and then looked at the child in Adiz's arms, and something moved across his face that was the last thing she expected to see there. Grief. Not performed. Not calculated. Real grief, old and private, the kind that lives behind the eyes of people who made an impossible choice long ago and have been living inside the consequences ever since. I was someone's child too, he said. Very quietly. To no one in particular. Adiz looked at him. I was placed on that altar, Dibia Okeke said, 62 years ago. By a mother who thought she had no choice. His voice was barely above a whisper. And I have maintained this shrine and this law and this debt my entire life because I told myself it was sacred. I told myself it was necessary. He looked at Chisholm, at the baby, who was watching him with those deep, ageless eyes. She is looking at me the way I must have looked at whoever came and took me away. The hum in the forest swelled and then softened. No one took you away, Adiz said slowly. You stayed. I had no one to take me. His gray eyes were wet. There was no barren woman who ran through the forest. There was no one who chose me. The clearing fell utterly silent. Chisholm reached out one small hand toward the old man. What happened at the altar that night, what words Chidinma spoke, what the shrine accepted, what moved through the trees and either departed or settled into new stillness, Adiz never fully described to anyone. Not even Emeka. What she told people, when they asked, was this: they went in 4 and came out 4, and the baby was alive and warm, and the priest stood at the edge of the shrine's outer courtyard and watched them leave and did not follow. What she did not tell people was that he had stood there looking at Chisholm for a very long time before they left. And that Chisholm had looked back. And that the old man's face, in the last light of the new moon rising, had looked less like a priest and more like a man who had spent 60 years waiting for something he had given up hoping for. What she did not tell people was that she had turned back, at the edge of the tree line, and called out to him. You could come with us, she had said. For food. Just food. And he had said nothing. Had not moved. But he had not gone back inside the shrine either. 3 weeks later, the cassava farm beside Adiz's house had been cleared and replanted. Emeka's hands were dirty with good soil for the first time in 2 seasons. Ngozi came on Saturdays. She and Adiz had arrived at no formal arrangement, had signed no papers, had made no declarations. They had simply, without discussion, become the kind of women who share a child the way some people share a story, with both of them holding different parts of it, and neither part being the whole truth, and the whole truth being something more than either of them alone could carry. Chidinma was ill. Had been since the night at the shrine. Not dying, not yet, but diminished, as though something had been quietly drawn out of her. She sat in Ngozi's sitting room in the evenings and held Adana and sang to her in a voice that was getting smaller by the week, and her eyes when she sang were full of something that looked less like regret and more like relief. And sometimes, in the late afternoon when the light came gold through the iroko trees at the edge of the village and the air smelled of turned earth and wood smoke, Adiz would look at the child in her arms, this child who had been a sacrifice and a miracle and a debt and a doorway, and feel the full impossible weight of what it meant to love something that was never entirely yours. She had gone to a shrine to beg for a child. What she had gotten was far more complicated. And standing in the yard with Chisholm warm against her chest and Emeka's voice carrying from the farm and Ngozi's sandals on the front step, she thought, maybe this is what miracles are. Not the clean thing you asked for. The complicated thing you needed. Chisholm looked up at her. Smiled. That night, Adiz woke at midnight. She lay still, heart already loud, eyes going immediately to the corner. Empty. Just wall. Just shadow. She released a slow breath. Then Chisholm, beside her, turned her head in sleep, and in the moonlight coming through the curtain, Adiz saw the symbol on the white cloth. The Onu Yuwa. The mouth of the world. It was darker than before. And the doorway in the symbol, the doorway that had been empty. Something was standing in it now. Part 2, What Came Through the Door. Drops next week. Subscribe and turn on notifications, you will not want to miss it. And comment below, do you think Adiz should keep Chisholm? Or does Ngozi deserve to raise her own daughter? Tell us what you think.